Greetings and salutations to all of my fellow rock and roll denizens out there in podcast land. It's Friday night. You know what that means. It is time for another episode, the latest, the greatest installment of the Fortress of Rock, episode 220 here on November the 14th, 2025. I, of course, am your humble and gracious host, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. And as always, I don't say it enough. Thank you very much each and every Friday night for checking out The Fortress as we talk about, we discuss, we debate topics within the realm of the music that we all love, classic rock and roll. Of course, that takes us from the mid-60s all the way through the early 90s, again, in my humble opinion. Lots to discuss this week. A few days ago, I thought we were looking at a little bit of a lean episode. Now we are jam-packed. We're going to give you a full 90 minutes. Reviews, a look back, of course, in time at significant moments in classic rock, and of course keeping you up to date on what is going on right now. And that is where we start. News of the world. News of the world, of course, is always our first segment every Friday night. Our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. You've got the tour news coming. Pretty much every week you can bank on that we're going to have some kind of tour updates for you, whether it's huge, magnificent tour updates like we've had recently, or maybe this week, a little bit more second tier stuff, but that's okay because we all love live music. We've got some new music releases to discuss, book release. So let's get into it, shall we? To me, personally, and I would hope to most of you out there, the big news of the week, of course, is David Coverdale retiring from the music biz. Of course, David Coverdale, most well known as the frontman for Whitesnake, used to sing lead vocals for Deep Purple. He was always considered, in my opinion, a charlatan. By others, not by me, but by others. He was a Robert Plant wannabe, a Robert Plant knockoff. And Whitesnake, for quite a while early on in their career, I think they were held back a little bit because of that comparison. Then, of course, when Whitesnake blew up in the 80s, and they became one of the biggest hair metal bands of the 80s, everybody kind of shut up and said, well, I guess we can't really rip on him anymore because he's making millions and millions and millions of dollars doing what he's doing. I was never the biggest Whitesnake fan, but I did like them. They had some great, great songs. I think my problem with them was that they never really put together, from beginning to end, any classic album. And of course people go, what about the self-titled Whitesnake? No, not beginning to end. And I am very picky. You guys all know this. I am very, very picky. A classic album to me had better be good from beginning to end. I might forgive one weak song if the rest of the album is exemplary. But Whitesnake never really got there. And to be honest, most of the bands in the 80s that I love, the hair metal bands, never really did that. Rats Out of the Cellar could be the exception to the rule. But I'm not trying to denigrate David Coverdale. I am here to celebrate David Coverdale in his retirement. And I think this was the right move. Health issues for years have been plaguing the band. You've had people moving in and out of the lineup. Reb Beach, Joel Hoekstra. It was always about David Coverdale. He was Whitesnake. And I remember the first time I saw them at the Star Plaza Theater in Maryville, Indiana. They were phenomenal. They were touring on the Purple album, which of course was David Coverdale redoing a lot of his classic Deep Purple songs. But he wanted to do them with his Whitesnake lineup. Now, the second time I saw them, they were opening. I cannot remember for who. I apologize. But you could tell just those few years that passed between that show in Maryville, Indiana, and the opening act show. Just vastly different band. And you could tell time was already starting to wear David Coverdale down. So, we all hope that David Coverdale enjoys his retirement. He looks great, by the way, with the all-white mane of hair in the video where he basically tells all of us that he's done. Cheers, David. You did well. We will miss you. But if you're going to go out, you're going to do it the right way. You do it like this. So, dare I hope, I know it'll never happen, but dare I hope David Coverdale ever would get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, even though he deserves it. We all know how that works. And by the way, just a quick side note here. I will not be discussing last weekend's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. We've already discussed the bands that got in way back when it was first announced. I don't care about the performances. I think it's a bunch of garbage, a bunch of hooey. I will say a couple things real quick about some ancillary notes, comments that were made outside of the ceremony. Number one, kudos to Dennis DeYoung of Styx, formerly of Styx. Now, I will admit, anybody who's listened to the Fortress over the past 4+ years knows I don't miss him at all in Styx, because he was the one towards the end that was turning all Kevin Cronin, and all he wanted to do was ballads and operatic songs and big show, big showy Broadway type stuff. Whereas Tommy Shaw and James Young still wanted to stick to more of the traditional rock, little bit of prog rock template of classic Styx music. But Dennis DeYoung just came out and tore into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here this past week. And everything he said, I second it. I completely agree. He was talking about things like, as we've said here, stop waiting and waiting and waiting until the performers are either dead or incapacitated. Now, I believe last week I did pass along the fact that Paul Rodgers was not going to be able to perform with Bad Company. He referenced that. Of course, referenced the fact Warren Zevon is long gone. And then he finally gets into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then he says, again, that something that we, and I'm not just saying it's been here only on the Fortress of Rock. This is something rock and roll fans across the globe have been saying. for a long, long time. Change the name. Change the name, because it's just false advertising and it's garbage to call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You could tell by who they invited to this ceremony here in 2025. You can tell by who they're trying to push in to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and who they're keeping out. And yes, I understand the fact that Dennis DeYoung is biased. Then I'm biased, because Styx should be in by now, well before a lot of these other performers. Not necessarily this year, but in years past. Sheryl Crow being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before Styx is an ungodly slight on music and rock and roll. That is idiotic and ridiculous. Sheryl Crow does not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before Styx, before Kansas, before Boston. And I will be more than happy to sit down and go toe-to-toe in a debate with anybody who wants to tell me otherwise. Because it's wrong, and it's wrong. So again, I'm with Dennis DeYoung here. Change the name. Make it the Music Hall of Fame. And then maybe some of us will calm down. I will personally be happy if they change the name, because the next step would be somebody else puts up some money and actually builds another museum, another Rock and Roll Hall of Fame somewhere else, where we actually do get to pay tribute to the true form of rock and roll. I'm tired. It's about time we stopped sharing. Rock and roll doesn't mean you get to let everybody in. It's not DEI, okay? It's rock and roll. There are dozens of performers and bands that need to be in, and a lot of them that need to be pulled out. Otherwise, as Dennis DeYoung said, change the name. Make it the Music Hall of Fame, and then I will shut up. Everybody else who's a critic will shut up. Because then it's all inclusive. Then it's any and every form of music. Put Glenn Miller in. Put Buddy Rich in. Put whoever and whatever out of blues, jazz, rap, hip-hop, whoever you want to put in, you can put in. But don't keep this charade up year after year after year where you talk about it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you keep putting people in who don't belong ahead of people who have personified the spirit of rock and roll from the mid-'60s on. And you wait and you wait and you wait, like DeYoung said, until they die, and then you go, oh yeah, I guess we should put them in. Just stop it. Stop trying to fool all of us, because you're not. Then the other thing, the other thing to take away from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction and everything surrounding it. Nancy Wilson. Nancy Wilson, I used to respect her. I really did. I used to think she was awesome in heart. Now, of course, her sister, Anne, is one of the top 2 or 3 greatest voices ever, female voices ever, in rock history. And she's probably top 10, top 15 all time, male, female, doesn't matter. But Nancy, I get it, they're a sister act, they've been the core of Heart since the beginning, I get it. But Nancy continues to grate on my nerves. Starting when we go back to the 80s, when they changed their look. You know, they decided to start looking like the hair metal bands or the MTV bands and putting on all the bright neon stuff and 15 different things in their hair. And then they had the big hits that resuscitated their career, including the song These Dreams, which I believe is their biggest hit ever, sad to say. Now, Nancy Wilson, of course, she is responsible for one of the greatest guitar hooks of all time with Barracuda. And I've seen them in concert, and when she steps up to the front of the stage and starts ripping into that initial riff that carries through Barracuda, it is magical. Her voice and her opinions, not so much. These Dreams is one of the most overrated, awful songs ever. She has a weak voice. And I saw the other day where, there's everything and anything on the internet. I get that. But there's some kind of website called Ranker, I think it is. Ranker. And their latest list of the top 10 female rock vocalists of all time has Nancy Wilson, not Ann, Nancy Wilson at number 10 all time. That's pathetic. That's inaccurate, and it's awful. These Dreams, when I hear her voice, makes me want to cringe. Now, let's take this to modern day. Let's not live in the 80s. Although I would love to, I still think we should all have lived in the 80s and been brought up in the 80s, a better time than what these poor kids are dealing with now. But I digress. We come to present day. A year ago, they put out a tribute album called Magic Power to the great Triumph, the underrated Triumph, another phenomenal band from the 80s. And they let Nancy Wilson sing Fight the Good Fight. One of the greatest rock and roll songs ever. And she butchered it. She destroyed it. I would not recommend it. I don't want you to listen to it because I don't want you to go through the 4.5 minutes of agony that I went through listening to it. Now she comes out and has the audacity to say she thinks Howard Stern should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Howard Stern should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So let's ignore all the performers, let's ignore all the other bands, and I know there are categories for influencers and people who work behind the scenes, and that's what she's trying to get at here. But for her to imply that Howard Stern, because he has so many rock and roll bands on his show and he's always supported rock and roll, he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is idiotic beyond all belief. Nancy Wilson needs to shut up. Get back in the studio, work on some new music with your sister, or go out on the road and just play the same old garbage over and over again. But she's not as talented as everybody thinks she is. Ann Wilson is heart. It's obvious. It's obvious. Going back to the beginning, and I'm sure Ann Wilson will be humble and say, my sister has always been an equal partner in this partnership. After what I have heard from the 80s on, Ann Wilson is the backbone, is the strength, is the heart of heart. And Nancy Wilson needs to stifle it. I'll admit it's probably because of the Triumph thing. I still think the Howard Stern take is ridiculous, but destroying one of my favorite songs of all time, you'll never win me back. You will never win me back after that. Never. All right. Alex Van Halen. Yes, I got to slip in some Van Halen news if I can, whenever and wherever I can. Alex Van Halen, of course, put out his book Brothers, detailing the early, at least through the mid-'80s, the early years of Van Halen, and of course the early years of childhood and upbringing with his brother Eddie. Very good book, by the way, of course. If you need to dig back into the archives here at the Fortress, you can find my review of that book. Now we have been told there is a second book coming from Alex Van Halen. Unfortunately, not going to be as easy to access as the first book was. Now, the working title, there is not a firm title for this book yet. The working title is simply Van Halen. And again, it will cover roughly the same time frame. Now, Brothers also dealt with their younger years and their upbringing. But in terms of the band, this will cover roughly the same time frame, 1978 to 1984. This particular book will be more of, from what I can tell, a coffee table book, an art house book. You're going to have a lot of photos, a lot of artwork, pictures of memorabilia, that type of thing. Note again, though, I just want to point this out. Note how, again, Alex Van Halen is sticking with the original David Lee Roth era of Van Halen. Now, I would have thought a logical sequel would have been, for Brothers, would have been the Sammy Hagar era. And maybe the third book would have been a little bit of Gary Cherone era, and then the final run with Wolfgang, and then bringing back David Lee Roth. But Alex seems to be fixated on the early classic era David Lee Roth material. That tells me, just like I mentioned when I reviewed Brothers, he looks at that era fondly. He must, like Van Halen diehards like me, he must realize the magic that happened back then. And he's still reveling in it. And he is still fixated on it, for better or for worse. He looks at that era like many of us do as the golden age of Van Halen. Now, in terms of this second book, this new book that's coming out, the bad thing for us, most of us, unless you've got a lot of money out there, this will not be a mass-produced hardback like Brothers. This will be a limited edition and signed limited edition. So we're looking at, not 25, 30, 35 bucks down at your local Barnes & Noble. You're looking at, and prices haven't been set yet, so I'm speculating, but you're probably looking at $250 to $300. See what I mean? You can go look for it. There is a website for the book. It's an overseas publisher. Because when I went and I clicked on the link, I noticed that the other books that were featured were all in pounds, not in dollars. So probably not going to be able to indulge in this book as much as I would love to as a Van Halen fan. New music. Let's talk some new music. So we have got Jay Buchanan. Let's start off here. And you're going, Jay Buchanan, who is Jay Buchanan? You should know who Jay Buchanan is. We have not talked about Rival Sons on this podcast in a while, but you know they are one of our favorite bands here on the Fortress of Rock. Jay Buchanan, of course, is the lead singer for Rival Sons. And he is putting out his first solo album ever. Weapons of Beauty will be out February the 6th of 2026. And I believe once we get to the end of the show, we might have a little bit more to discuss about this. But very exciting news for fans of Rival Sons, as Jay Buchanan, their lead singer, puts out his first solo album early next year. Squeeze. We haven't talked about Squeeze in a while. Squeeze has a new album coming out called Trixies. This is coming out March the 6th of 2026. Interesting backstory to this album. Of course, Squeeze, I never mean any disrespect when I do this to the other members of the band, but Squeeze is essentially, and has always been, Glenn Tilbrook and Chris Difford. That duo has always been the core of Squeeze. This album, Trixies, is going to be songs that they both wrote when they were teenagers, before they even got together and formed the band we know as Squeeze. The first single is out. I invite you to jump out and listen to it. It is called Trixies Part 1. Again, that album will be out March the 6th, 2026. And then finally here, when it comes to new music, Kiss has always been all about the tease, the marketing, the presentation. And why should their sons be any different? We've got this long, slow promise now. December the 5th. December the 5th. So what? About 3 weeks plus or minus from now, here on November the 14th, we will get the first single ever from the duo of Evan Stanley and Nick Simmons. Yes, those are the sons of Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. Now they're going to be known as Stanley Simmons. Their very first single together, again coming out December the 5th, will be called Body Down. I am going to be very intrigued to hear this. Now there is a snippet, I guess, out there right now of it, a teaser. But I'm going to wait for the full song, fully produced. I want to hear the entire thing beginning to end. Not fair to judge anything based on just a snippet. You don't judge a movie based on the trailer. You can decide whether you want to go to it in the theater or not, or whether you're going to wait for it on streaming. I get that. But you don't judge the movie itself based on a trailer. And I'm not going to judge this song, Body Down, based on a snippet, a preview snippet. So I will wait till December, and then, of course, we will review that for you here on the Fortress of Rock, probably mid-December. All right, everything that's left here in News of the World here for the next few minutes is about touring. So we're going to rip through this pretty quickly here, because a lot of this is just add-ons and repeats of tours that we've already announced. No big massive tour announcements necessarily like we've had recently here with AC/DC and Journey and the Foo Fighters. Although we will start off with the Foo Fighters. We've already discussed the dates, the stadium dates here in North America. They have also announced 12 stadium dates in the United Kingdom and Europe. So Dave Grohl and company will be overseas. Again, 12 dates. Massive stadium tour here and overseas. These dates in the United Kingdom and Europe cover June and July of 2026. Now, I'm a little bit upset with the Guess Who. Bachman and Cummings, they've gotten back together. They've gotten the legal situation resolved. They've got their rights back to their name, their songs. And I know they're huge up in Canada. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive. I get it. They are huge up in Canada. But how about you start thinking about touring here in the United States? We love the Guess Who. I would love to see them. But for now, the way they've set things up, they've got 12 dates set up all in Canada for this big relaunch, reunion tour, again with Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman, May through August, which tells me there's plenty of time in there to work in some U.S. shows. So come on, guys, let's do it. But for now, if you want to see the Guess Who, you're going to have to go up to the Great North, eh? I don't do a very good Canadian accent. I don't do a good Mackenzie Brothers thing. I'm sorry. Take off, man. I had the Great White North, by the way, on cassette back in the day. All right, Chicago. Keeps on keeping on. They've added about 16 new dates, roughly 16 new dates in the United States this coming May of 2026. The band that will not quit. When we hear about a Chicago farewell tour, that's when I'm going to realize that rock and roll's ending. Because Chicago is the band that just seem like the one constant from near the beginnings of rock and roll and still going strong to this day. Now, of course, the best example would be Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. Oh, how about a segue there? Ringo Starr and his all-star band, they're still going strong. They have set up shows May and June of 2026 in the western states in the U.S. 12 more dates for Ringo Starr and his all-star band. Of course, the all-star band features Steve Lukather of Toto and Colin Hay of Men at Work. If you like Little Feat, I never got into Little Feat, but I know they have their place somewhere in the annals of rock and roll history. Now I'll give them credit for this. They're calling this the last farewell tour, but they're admitting, it's a little bit of a joke. We're not calling it quits necessarily yet. This is kind of a very gradual progression into retirement, which they say could take years. I would prefer people do this. Again, I give credit to Little Feat for saying, we're calling it the last farewell tour, but it's going to be years and years, a gradual, slow wind down. And we'll decide down the road when we're actually going to call it quits. But this is the start of the end. And I can live with that. Just don't give me the farewell tour, nope, we're coming back. Farewell tour, nope, we're coming back. Farewell tour, nope, we're coming back. So if you want to check out Little Feat as they start their last farewell tour, your first chances will be in April and May of 2026. They have 14 dates in the U.S. set up right now. It's your weekly Eagles Sphere update, kids. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I don't buy into it. I've told you over the last couple weeks, I'm not going to let any more of these performers, these bands, fool me or fool you, fool us. We won't get fooled again. Ironically, The Who went on how many different farewell tours? The Eagles have set up 4 more shows at the Sphere in Las Vegas. Those shows are in March of 2026. The interesting thing about this is some outlets are reporting that these are the final shows the Eagles will perform at the Sphere. Now, I have not found confirmation on that. And what does that mean for the Eagles going forward? Are we going to get one more final run? A farewell tour from the Eagles? Are they going to go back out and start hitting other cities and other countries again one last time? Or is this it? Once the Eagles are done with the Sphere in March of 2026, are they done? I would think there would be a little bit more of an uproar if this was actually it for the Eagles. And again, I'm just telling you what I heard from other sources. They supposedly are saying at least these are the final shows for now for the Eagles and the final shows at the Sphere in Las Vegas. Again, March of 2026. Joe Jackson going out on a massive tour in 2026. Of course, I go all the way back. He's not a one-hit wonder. I can't call him that. But most people know him from the song, Is She Really Going Out With Him? Or Steppin' Out. Right? So you can't call him a one-hit wonder. Technically had a couple big hits. But Joe Jackson is back. He's got a new album coming out, and he's going out on a massive worldwide tour. Joe Jackson has the new album Hope and Fury coming out April the 10th of 2026. He's got approximately 80 shows set up next year, running from May through December. Now, he's almost splitting these up evenly between North America and Europe. North America will get Joe Jackson from May through July. And then he will take a break and he'll head over to Europe, where the rest of the year, from September through December of 2026, he will be over the pond. Then finally, wrapping up news of the world. Told you guys a lot of stuff to discuss here. Mickey Dolenz, the last surviving member of the Monkees, is going out on tour to celebrate 60 years of the Monkees. He's going to space this out, give himself some time at his age. I don't blame him. So his tour, 60 years of the Monkees, will go from February all the way through November of 2026, covering 24 U.S. cities. Part of me wants to go see that because I am a huge fan of the Monkees. That was the first concert I ever went to see with my daughter. Of course, the Monkees have never fully gotten back together. And I'm talking about, 15, 20, 25 years ago, obviously, with the other three members, Peter Tork and Davy Jones and Michael Nesmith, all passing away. But we got to see Peter and Davy and Mickey. And of course, more recently, the big supposed Monkees farewell shows involved Mike coming back finally into the fold with Mickey. But got to see, like I said, Peter, Davy, and Mickey, and then a year later, Davy Jones died. Very, very sad, but still a great memory for me. So anytime anything involving the Monkees comes up, I am all in. Now you have to keep in mind here the age of Mickey Dolenz and the fact that, yes, he sang on lead vocals on a lot of their hit songs, but maybe 50% of them, 60% at best. So you're not going to get the variety that you would if you still had any of the other members around. And I hate to say it, but that does detract from what you should expect from the show. But I would still go see it. Still, I mean, I was, sadly, when I heard this announcement, I was thinking about, with the Who, we've got 2 of the 4 original Who members left. The Beatles, we've got 2 of the 4 original members of the Beatles. So again, we know this is coming. That we're gonna get hit here soon, within the next couple years, where there's going to be a massive loss of all the classic rock and rollers from the 60s and the 70s. So go out and see them if you can afford it, when you can. Because they ain't coming back around. Unless, of course, you believe in rock and roll heaven like I do. And once I pass through those pearly gates, I get to see Eddie Van Halen jamming with Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan. One can only hope. All right, so we're finally done with news of the world. Now we move on to Breakdown. Breakdown, of course, segment 2 is where we pay tribute to the late, great Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Breakdown is, of course, where we review the best in new music, albums, songs, and when we have them, concert reviews. So I was playing around with this week. I was initially going to review the Tenacious D package, the complete Masterworks Volume 3, but then I got a surprise late last week. And Kings of Leon put out a 4-song EP of brand new material. And I am a big Kings of Leon fan. So, what we've got for you this week on Breakdown is I'm going to review all 4 tracks on EP number 2 from Kings of Leon. Also have 3 other songs to review for you. So, we'll push Tenacious D back a couple weeks because next week has already been locked in. And we'll discuss that when we get to segment 4. Wrap it up. EP number 2 by Kings of Leon. Of course, track by track. Not much of a challenge here for me because it's only 4 songs, but anytime we review a new song, or in this case an EP, we always review them track by track. So we start off with the first song on EP number 2, All the Little Sheep. What an amazing, catchy guitar riff. I'm not going to say it's the most challenging, the most complex riff of all time, but it will just grab you and it will suck you in the first time you hear it. Now, because this is only 4 songs, I was able to devote a little bit more time to diving into the lyrics and anything and everything involving these 4 songs. I was trying to put together some kind of a theme based on the lyrics here. Now, All the Little Sheep seems to be discussing the themes that I find on this EP are: we're lemmings, we're animals, we follow along with anything and everything we're told to do. Ambition should be frowned upon, looked at with disdain. Now, I say this with a little bit of sarcasm, which I think the band is also trying to convey as well. But All the Little Sheep in its lyrics basically has the protagonist living a basic normal life with his kids. Gotta go home, gotta clean up the pig pen. All the little sheep, of course, are the lemmings following along. So who are the lemmings in this song is my question. Are the lemmings the people trying to fight and work and achieve for vast wealth? Or are the lemmings those hardworking middle and lower class people who are just trying to get by, scrape by, and as they say, go home, raise their kids, and clean up the pig pen? That's the question. And I don't have a clear answer. But it seems to me like the album does have a little bit more disdain for the rich and the arrogant, and seems to care a little bit more about the lower classes and the downtrodden. Because then we get to the second song, To Space, which follows exactly in the footsteps and the themes lyrically of All the Little Sheep. Now, these both of these songs, again, fit very well together, very up-tempo. To Space actually adds some subtle hand claps in the mix. But I wrote down a lot of things in the lyrics that, again, tie into this whole debate whether you should be upwardly mobile and sacrifice everything for that, or whether you should be content with living a very modest life but having more time to spend with people and with your family and actually having solid human connection. There are references to a broken ladder. Of course, what have we always been told throughout our lives? Climb the ladder. Earn your way up the ladder. Follow the leader. Another thing we've always been told, right? If you're not going to lead, you're going to follow. In the chorus, very interesting line, underachievers, hide your faces. So can you see where I'm going here with the lyrics? Now, I wish the whole EP, even though it's only 4 songs, I would have loved it if the whole EP would have really followed through on this theme, this class warfare idea that they seem to be going with, at least through the first 2 songs. Unfortunately, when I get to track 3, Pit to the Rind, and I have no idea, I didn't Google it, I have no idea what Pit to the Rind means. I guess it means from the core to the outside, if you're talking about a fruit, right? Pit, the inner pit, the rind, the outside. So from the inside to the outside is what I'm taking it as. This is the one song of the 4 that has a slower tempo, a little bit more of a slow burn. And anybody who's listened to Kings of Leon knows they have a tendency once in a while to do this, to slow things down. And again, this is the outlier of the 4 songs in terms of this theme I was hoping that they were building. You do have a line in there, in the chorus, about one less mountain to climb. But that's me stretching. I don't see this song lyrically fitting in with the other 3. And again, this is also musically the one song that doesn't fit in. It's good, don't get me wrong, but where the other 3 are up-tempo and have basically the same lyrical content in the themes they're trying to discuss, this is the outlier. Because track 4 is The Wolf. We get lines like, who can save us from ourselves? And animals is all we'll ever be. As the band sings about basically the predatory nature of who we are. We will feast on the weak. And that is, again, another analogy, going back to the first 2 songs, about business and upward mobility. You feast on the weak. That's the only way you're going to move up the corporate ladder. See, there's the ladder reference. So 3 of the 4 songs seem to be exploring the same territory, and borderline brilliantly, I might add. Whereas Pit to the Rind, still a good song, does not seem to fit in. I've listened to this at least half a dozen times, if not more. I've been trying to make Pit to the Rind fit with the other 3 to make this overall EP seem more brilliant than it probably is. But don't get me wrong, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Disappointed that it's only 4 songs. Now, coming off the fact that we had those 2 other songs that Kings of Leon did with Zach Bryan, it's interesting to me what this band is doing right now. It doesn't seem like they want to make a firm commitment to a full album. I would have been very interested to hear them take these 4 songs, maybe their song, We're On to Something, because of course Bowery was technically a Zach Bryan song. Those 5 songs, sit on those. Go back into the studio, give me another 5 or 6 really good songs, and give me a full album in 2026. But in the current music climate that we're dealing with, I'll take this. I will definitely take this. I will give Kings of Leon a high recommendation for EP number 2. Of course, there is no EP number 1. That's part of the joke. But this just dropped out of nowhere. It's awesome. Again, I love it. I highly recommend you check out the 4 songs EP number 2 from Kings of Leon. Very, very good. Very positive way as we head into the dregs of 2025, where we know we're not going to get a lot in December with the holidays and everything. Nice way to start along. We've got Cheap Trick. We'll discuss them. And then we've got Lynch Mob. We're going to discuss them too here in a minute. Those albums still coming out in November to wrap up the year. But really liked EP number 2. So let's stick with Lynch Mob. Of course, I am bitter. I am upset with George Lynch for lying to all of us about the Final Ride tour and saying that was it. I'm done with Lynch Mob. This is the last time I'll use that name. This is the last time you will see us in this current formation go out on tour, play music together. And then he goes, oh, I lied, so sue me. So Lynch Mob now technically has their quote-unquote final album coming out in a few weeks. I will not believe it anymore, kids. Neither should you. Do not believe it ever when any of these artists or bands tell us it's the final tour, it's the final album, it's the final song. Don't buy into it and don't believe it. So that being said, we will review the title track from this upcoming final album from Lynch Mob. The song is Dancing with the Devil. Now, I do think George Lynch is one of the best guitarists out there. Definitely has his own unique sound. Lynch Mob on its own, when you factor in the rest of the band, the vocals, the songwriting, they're good. They're good. At times great, but mostly good. I personally don't think their lead singer is all that far above average. I think above average could be a stretch. So that all falls on George Lynch. He needs to put in even more work with the guitar and the production and the songwriting to make this stuff even better. And I don't think, gonna sound like a jerk here, but I don't think he's got it in him. I think he was better when he had his foil, his exact opposite, his frenemy in Don Dokken, where they were always butting heads, and that led to great music. When you've got a generic lead singer in a band where they're all focused on you because the band is named after you, this is your baby, George. You're the one that's got to step up and make it better. And I don't think Lynch Mob, for the most part, has ever really risen to the heights that it should have. Very good, very solid band, but could have been so much better. And I've always talked about this year in and year out, on occasion on the podcast with music. The group dynamic always works better when the band is at least perceived as equals. We've talked about Van Halen, of course, the drama over the years and the decades with Van Halen. Just like I said, Lynch was better when he had Don Dokken fighting him tooth and nail. Yeah, I get it. Very subtle pun, Maestro, tooth and nail. When Dokken and Lynch were fighting tooth and nail all the time, it made for better music. It makes for a better dynamic. There's tension that brings out the best in both sides, or all parties involved. So Dancing with the Devil is another good but not great effort from Lynch Mob. I'm on the fence, I'll admit it. I don't know whether I can recommend this to you guys or not. I'm going to say no. Because what I will do is I will say there's better. Go back and listen to the first Lynch Mob album. Listen to Wicked Sensation. Listen to River of Love. Different lead singer. No, not going to say any difference in terms of that lead singer was better than their current lead singer. But at least early on in the band, things were a little bit fresh, a little bit different. That was about the best you're going to get. Wicked Sensation. So just kind of erring on the side of caution for you kids, I say no to Dancing with the Devil from Lynch Mob. And then real quick, these last two song reviews, because technically they're not new songs. The Black Moods, of course, a band that we talk about a lot here on the Fortress of Rock, one of those smaller bands that we like to focus on. Still very upset with them for not putting out their latest full album, Passion, anywhere where normal fans can get it. Still a vast, ridiculous marketing blunder, in my opinion. Their latest release is a remake of the old EMF hit, Unbelievable. Oh, every time I hear that, whether it's the original version or now the new version from the Black Moods, all I can think of is Andrew Dice Clay. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet. Oh! But the Black Moods really don't do a lot here to change up the original version. The guitars are a little bit heavier. But otherwise, it's a pretty paint-by-numbers remake of the original. So in that sense, again, I'm sorry, I can't recommend it, because why not just go ahead, let's give credit where credit's due to EMF and their original version. If you like the little bit heavier guitar work with the Black Moods, then maybe you go this way. But no, I can't recommend it per se. I would just say go back and listen to the original song, the big hit from EMF. Just like I said with Lynch Mob, go back and listen to their earlier work. And then finally, a lost, unreleased track from Kiss. They recently put out a massive box set deluxe edition celebrating Dressed to Kill, their second album. And this lost and unreleased track is called Mistake. And the minute it starts up, you will think you are listening to country music. It sounds like a country song. Now, eventually it kind of turns into a mid-tempo rocker, and then you hear Gene Simmons' vocals take over in harmony with Paul Stanley, which again is ironic, as we just talked about their sons getting together, and their new music is coming soon. I will say this. This is the toughest review of these three songs for me, because I want to recommend a Mistake. The problem is, and technically it's a demo, even though it's a very well-produced demo. It's not really all that rough, except at the end you can tell it gets cut off pretty harshly. The demo as it is on this Dressed to Kill deluxe edition is way too long. Way too long. It runs over 4.5 minutes, and the song can't sustain that. You should have cut this down by at least a minute. It would have been good as a 3-minute song, maybe 3 minutes and 20 seconds, but it just gets really repetitive over and over and over again. Would have been a heck of a lot stronger, like I said, a much shorter version, but as it stands, as it is, at over 4.5 minutes, it drones on way too long. So what could have been a really cool archival song from Kiss turns out to be, dare I say it, a mistake. So unfortunately, 3 for 3. 3 thumbs down. Kiss is probably the closest I'll give you to a recommendation because, again, the core of a really cool song is there. If they'd cut this down, I'm telling you, this probably could have made it onto Dress to Kill. But sometimes this is what happens in the studio. Excess, ego gets involved. But I will, of course, reiterate the fact that even though the 3 songs we reviewed this week maybe don't make it, don't pass muster, don't make the cut, Kings of Leon's EP number 2 definitely does. Great, great EP of 4 songs from Kings of Leon, so that you should definitely check out. All right, now it's the time in the podcast where I'm going to wander out to the garage, leave the studio, wander out to the garage here at the Fortress of Rock, hop in the rock and roll DeLorean. Beautiful, beautiful night, by the way. Actually got back up into the 60s after getting about 8 inches of snow 5 days ago. But that's okay. That's what we expect here in the upper Midwest. So I'm strapping myself into the rock and roll DeLorean. Doc Brown hops in. He is going to take us out into the rock and roll time stream, get us up to 1.21 gigawatts of power, 88 miles per hour, and then we are going to go back in time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. But before we do that, as he's getting everything ready to go and getting us up to speed, we will take care of some business here real quick. First up, you found us, you love us, you listen to us somewhere, obviously, but you have choices and you have options. Keep that in mind. Wherever you find the Fortress of Rock each and every Friday night, keep in mind you can find us on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, Good Pods, and YouTube. And then don't forget, we have fun every weekend, of course, because we drop the brand new episode of The Fortress on Friday nights. We also, on Friday nights, drop the Weekend Rock Project. Now, sometimes when I'm recording the podcast, I know what the Weekend Rock Project is going to be. Sometimes it's the other way around. I have it, it's out, it's posted. We're going to try something a little bit different here, at least for this week, maybe for 2 weeks, depending on the response we get for this weekend's Weekend Rock Project. We're not going to give you a word, a phrase, an idea. We're going to try discussion mode this weekend. Now, some of our usual rock and roll aficionados who chime in regularly will get mad. I call them the Weekend Rock Project Posse. But some of them will probably dig this and really get into it. I want to know what songs throughout your life as you've listened to music. If you're of my age, of course, you can go back to the 70s, 80s, 90s, up till today. What songs, what popular rock songs that other people, everybody around you, whether it's at a party or a bar or just out to a casual dinner with friends, what songs, as you're talking about music, does everybody go, oh, that's an awesome song. Oh, I love that song. Isn't that the greatest song ever? And you go, that song really stinks. I can't stand that song. I hate it. And everybody looks at you like you're crazy. That's your discussion point for this weekend's Weekend Rock Project. What songs that everybody else seems to love do you go, not good, don't like it, don't understand what the appeal is? The one that I put out there, because I always try to start the discussion, is the one I put out there is Sammy Hagar's Eagles Fly. He still plays it in concert to this day all the time. That, of course, came off the solo album that Eddie Van Halen produced for him when Sammy was in Van Halen. He had to fulfill his contract as a solo artist. I can't stand Eagles Fly. I can't stand it. I think it's generic feel-good mush. So what songs like that for you? Do you kind of feel like you're alone on an island? You're like, I don't get it. I don't understand the appeal of that song. Boy, everybody else around you is fawning all over it. And then, of course, Sunday on our Facebook page is New Music Sunday. That is where I will give you a link on YouTube to a new music video for a new song, because we have to listen to the new music. We have to keep these bands and performers interested and let them know that we're still listening to their new output. Please keep giving us new music. We just don't want the same old all the time, over and over again. Not sure yet what we're going to have for you this Sunday, but as always, while I'm watching the NFL on Sunday afternoon, I will come up with something. Then, of course, I need help. Everybody needs some help. We need a little help from our friends. In this case, my friends would be some websites, some internet sources that help me fill out everything you hear each and every Friday night here on the Fortress of Rock. Main sources for some of the ideas, the news stories that we come up with, ultimateclassicrock.com, the Van Halen newsdesk.com, thisdayinmusic.com, and we have a new one this week because thisdayinmusic.com let me down this week, and I didn't like what they were telling me in terms of rock and roll history, so I found a backup source which I will use going forward to flesh out segment 3 here. I want to go back. thecurrent.org, which gave me a couple really neat and interesting anniversaries. And we'll discuss those here as we now officially are up to speed in the rock and roll time stream and we move into I Want to Go Back here on the Fortress of Rock. All right, reception here in the rock and roll time stream seems to be a little bit sketchy, but hopefully this will transmit back to Earth so you guys can hear it. Little bit of technical difficulties going on here as we do I Want to Go Back. But we'll start off with anniversaries here for November the 14th. We just reported this last year, obviously, since it occurred on November the 14th, 2024. But Vic Flick passed away on this day. And of course, Vic Flick is responsible for one of the greatest guitar riffs in the history of music. He is responsible for the guitar riff in the James Bond theme. We go back to November the 14th, 2006. This is where I started to get help from The Current, because I just felt like I wasn't getting enough this week from thisdayinmusic.com when it comes to their list of music anniversaries, so I had to go out, found a couple other very significant ones that they missed. So again, this is why I mentioned that we've got that new additional source for rock and roll knowledge, The Current. On this day in 2006, and we'll discuss these guys a little bit more in a few minutes when we get to wrap it up, the soundtrack to the movie The Pick of Destiny. Yes, Tenacious D. That soundtrack album was released on this day in 2006. Once again, The Pick of Destiny. On this day, November the 14th, 1996, Michael Jackson married Debbie Rowe. And you knew this was ill-fated from the start. It's a sad, sad story. Just because of the fact that, again, I think she worked in his dermatologist's office. They get married. They're divorced 3 years later in 1999. And she basically gives up all rights to children that they had together, anything and everything, for $8 million. Just, I'm sorry. It's the cynical part of me, but that's just sad, sad, sad. On this day, November the 14th, 1987, the soundtrack, another soundtrack, this time a much more successful and popular soundtrack, the soundtrack to Dirty Dancing, was the #1 album in the United States on this day in 1987. On this day, November the 14th, 1975, Queen launched A Night at the Opera World Tour. They started out on this day in Liverpool, England. Once again, A Night at the Opera, Queen's World Tour, started on this day in 1975. And then finally, for anniversaries, on this day, November the 14th, 1960, Ray Charles had the #1 single in the United States with Georgia on My Mind. Now we move over to birthdays here for November the 14th. Pretty heavy load for birthdays. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1975. Drummer for Blink-182, Travis Barker. I've told you guys I'm not big into Blink-182, sorry. Or some people would correct me and say it's Blink-182. I don't care. I'm going to call him Blink-182. Happy birthday, Travis. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1970, Brendan Benson. Now, Brendan Benson, his solo career to me doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, but he is a member of one of Jack White's side projects. My humble opinion, his best side project, The Raconteurs. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1968, Brian Yale, bass player for Matchbox 20. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1966, Joseph Simmons, better known as Run. And of course, that would make him part of Run DMC. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1956, Alec John Such, bass player for Bon Jovi. unfortunately former bass player for John Bon Jovi. His band, Alex Van Halen, left Bon Jovi, and then unfortunately a few years ago passed away in 2022. On this day, happy birthday, unfortunately, another rock and roll icon from the 80s. We celebrate his birthday, but unfortunately he has also left us. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1951, Frankie Banali, drummer for Quiet Riot. And unfortunately, Frankie passed away in 2020. Born on this day, same day as Frankie Banali, November the 14th, 1951, Stephen Bishop, well-known songwriter. For those of us who grew up in the 70s and the early 80s, of course, I always reference that time frame, and I'm sorry if it alienates those older or younger than me. But Stephen Bishop will always be known to me as the guy behind the wonderfully cheesy, mellow yacht rock song On and On. Born on this day, November the 14th, 1949. Still out there rocking, kicking butt with his band Styx. James J.Y. Young. Born on this day again in 1949. And then finally for birthdays, born on this day, November the 14th, 1938. Cornell Gunter, who was in the Platters and the Coasters, two classic bands. He, of course, is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And another sad addendum, just like with Alex Van Halen and Frankie Banali, Cornell Gunter was killed, murdered, in Las Vegas in 1990. So that is going to do it as we catch you up on classic moments in rock and roll history, album releases, birthdays, all that good stuff. Doc Brown has turned us back around. It looks like we're going to be heading to Studio B when we get back to the Fortress, because Studio A is having some issues. Nothing major, just a one-time little glitch. Hopefully everything is still coming through fine for you as we touch back down to earth. Slide the DeLorean back into the garage here, and we're going to pull up the moat. I do this every couple months. Pull the drawbridge up over the moat. See, the classic thing when it comes to sports commentary is that instead of saying coin toss, you say toin coss. It's one of those phrases where you always mix it up. And every couple months, I always say, we're going to pull the moat up over the drawbridge. And of course, I mean, we're pulling the drawbridge up over the moat, locking everything down here on Friday night, November the 14th, getting ready to turn the lights off, shut everything down, have our late night cocktail to ease into some hopefully awesome rock and roll slumber, and then face the weekend head on Saturday morning. Yeah. Toin costs and pulling the moat up over the drawbridge. Yeah. Great job, Maestro. But now I stumble and bumble my way, verbally at least, into Studio B here at the Fortress of Rock to wrap it up. Of course, wrap it up is segment 4, our fourth and final segment each and every week here on the Fortress of Rock. We've looked at the present day situation when it comes to rock and roll. We did that in News of the World, and we did that in Breakdown. Then, of course, we looked at the past with I Want to Go Back. Now we look to the future. What is coming up for the rest of the year, for the rest of the month at least, when it comes to the Fortress of Rock? You know, this time of year, you know things get a little skimpy, should I say. All the stuff that's going to be out there for presents and for gifts and for the holidays is pretty much going to be out here by the end of the month. So December is that time where we're going to start doing our retrospective and our look back at the year that was in rock and roll, but we're not quite there yet. The next 3 weeks for the Fortress of Rock, set in stone. And I mentioned to you earlier in Breakdown that we shifted the calendar a little bit. Now, next week is what it was always going to be. Episode 221 of the Fortress of Rock, dropping on November the 21st, is still going to be the brand new album from Cheap Trick. It is out today as you're listening to this. All Washed Up is out. We will have a full review of that album for you next Friday night here on the Fortress of Rock. Now, in 2 weeks, that's where things have shifted a little bit. We've bumped Tenacious D. Yes, we just talked about Tenacious D and their anniversary with the release of the soundtrack to their movie The Pick of Destiny. Their new, it's been out for about a month and a half, their new video compilation, and they put these out every 6, 7, 8 years. The Complete Masterworks Volume 3 from Tenacious D. That will be our featured review in 2 weeks. That is now scheduled for episode 222 on November the 28th. And then finally, this one also set in stone in 3 weeks, which will carry us, of course, into early December. The new album from Lynch Mob, the final. Yeah, right. Sure. The final album from Lynch Mob, Dancing with the Devil. We will have that review for you. The full album coming episode 223, dropping December the 5th. After that, things are getting a little fuzzy. We'll do some songs. We have, by the way, a great lineup of songs somehow, some way. We cleaned the slate this week. We wiped everything off with the eraser. You know, because we reviewed Lynch Mob. We could review Saints and Sinners, but there's no point. That was the second single from Lynch Mob's new album. We mentioned that last week. There's no point. We're going to review the full album here in 3 weeks. We're just going to wait for the full album. We'll review it all then. And then, of course, we knocked out Kiss in the Black Mood, so left us with nothing. Ha! Very, very interesting, eclectic, dare I say, set of new songs that we've got. 5 songs that we will probably end up reviewing. I would say, if we can get away with it, we push that off to 4 weeks out, so that would cover us on our December the 12th podcast episode, and then the week after that, we'll probably do our year-end review. The songs I am talking about, that I am so giddy about, that I am so enthusiastic about right now, we mentioned Squeeze at the top of the show in News of the World. Squeeze has their new album out, Trixies. So the first single off of that is Trixies Part 1. So we've got that on the agenda coming up here in a few weeks. We talked about Howl, Owl, Howl That is the new quote-unquote supergroup that features, it's a trio. It features Darius Rucker on vocals, of course, Darius Rucker of Hootie and the Blowfish, and Mike Mills from REM. They finally released their first song, My Cologne. Very odd song, I will say this. You can tell by the title, very, very odd song. Okay? But we'll review that here coming up. Again, maybe in that special 12/12 slot, if not earlier, here on the Fortress. Blackberry Smoke. Blackberry Smoke has just released their best of greatest hits collection. Volume 1, of course, which means they don't plan on quitting anytime soon. That collection has an previously unreleased song on it called We Got Company. So we love some Blackberry Smoke here on the Fortress of Rock. So we will review that coming up within the next few weeks. We Got Company from Blackberry Smoke. Black Swan, the news is awesome. Now, when we reviewed the great song from them, The Fire and the Flame, I told you I didn't know what that meant. Is that a one-off? Is that the precursor to a new album? You know, Jeff Pilson has got so much going on with Foreigner. We don't know what Reb Beach is doing with Winger right now. The great and glorious news is Black Swan is officially back. The new album has now been announced. Paralyzed will be out February the 13th of 2026. So we have the second single, the follow-up to The Fire and the Flame, If I Was King. So we will definitely be reviewing that for you. Black Swan is a band that's very, very new to the Fortress of Rock. I admit it, we're late to the game on this one. We did not jump on the bandwagon with the first two albums. That is on me. If I had known these albums were out, and again, we're not getting a lot in terms of publicity and press pushing these albums. But I will be more than happy to tell you the third album from Black Swan, Paralyzed, is out again February the 13th of 2026. And we will review the second single after the fantastic initial lead-off single, The Fire and the Flame. The new second single is If I Was King. Coming soon here on the Fortress of Rock. And then finally, I saved the best for last, the most intriguing for last. You know we love the Rival Sons here on the Fortress of Rock. Rival Sons, anytime they put anything new out, we go crazy, bonkers, cuckoo. But wait, we don't have anything new from Rival Sons. So what? Jay Buchanan is the lead singer for Rival Sons. And Jay Buchanan is putting out his first ever solo album. We discussed this at the beginning of the show. The solo album is Weapons of Beauty. It is out February the 6th of 2026. The first single is out, Caroline. And we will, of course, review that for you. Jay Buchanan, one of the great voices currently in rock and roll. So we go from cleaning the slate and having nothing to now having Squeeze, Howl, Owl, Howl, Blackberry Smoke, Jay Buchanan, and Black Swan, all out there for our digestion, our musical digestion and perusal and review over the next month here on the Fortress of Rock. Great news. And so that means the last thing we've got left is the Fortress of Rock charts I'm not going to give you the big spiel. I'm just going to tell you we do this because Billboard has screwed rock and roll. The Billboard charts don't care about rock and roll. They care more about, let's make sure Taylor Swift has 47 songs in the Hot 100. They don't want to promote rock and roll. They don't care about rock and roll. Very similar to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Is there collusion? Are they in cahoots? Probably, because they both suck. So we, here at the Fortress of Rock, will do what we can to promote rock and roll, to keep new rock alive. And that means we're going to tell you at the end of every podcast, every Friday night, what our top album and what our top 2 songs are, because 2, of course, is always better than 1. Cheating a little bit here this week with our top album. You could probably see this coming a mile away. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe you thought once again I was going to go with Mammoth. Because you know how much I love anything and everything involving the Van Halen name. But no. Now it's an EP. So that's why I'm saying a little bit of cheating here, but still. Our number 1 album of the week is EP number 2 by Kings of Leon. Of course, I just reviewed that in Breakdown this week. It is fantastic. 4 songs, but I still highly recommend it. So yes, even though it's a little bit of hedging, fudging the rules, EP number 2 by Kings of Leon is your top album of the week. Your top songs. You figured at least one, if not 2 songs would come off the top album, and you're right. All the Little Sheep by Kings of Leon is one of your top songs of the week, along with Stampede by the Stray Cats. Still very, very sad, discouraged, haven't heard any updates on the health of Brian Setzer. Really, honestly, hope he does okay. But Stampede, one of 2 songs, of course, we reviewed last week that they released to kind of set up, get everybody excited for this upcoming tour that never came to be, that was canceled. Thanks, Ticketmaster, for dragging your feet and taking so long to get me my money back, jerks. But Stampede, an awesome, awesome song, just makes me, every time I listen to it, to listen to that along with Teenage Heaven, just makes me so sad that I did not get to see Brian Setzer and the boys live. But to recap, your top album of the week is an EP. It is EP number 2 by Kings of Leon. Your top songs are All the Little Sheep by Kings of Leon. Killer guitar riff in that song. And then, of course, Stampede by the Stray Cats. And that is going to do it for the Fortress of Rock here on November the 14th, 2025. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Ran a little over 90 minutes. We always try to keep it right in that hour and a half time frame now. But a little bit of bonus content, I hope, does not upset anyone. We'll do this all again next Friday night, each and every Friday night until the Maestro drops dead. Because I love rock and roll. I love talking to you guys about rock and roll. It will not stop until they pull me up. I referenced it earlier, to the pearly gates of rock and roll heaven. And hopefully that's not going to be for a long, long time. So until we talk again in 7 days, I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. Hug those kids. Kiss your significant other. Love the ones you're with. And until we talk again about the music that we all love, classic rock and roll. Peace out, kids.